You know that moment when the phone finally stops buzzing, when the messages stop coming, and there's this heavy, almost sacred quiet that fills the air? Yeah, that one, the silence that feels louder than any argument you've ever had. The silence that isn't just outside of you, it's inside of you. And suddenly, you start asking yourself, did I do the right thing? Should I have said more? What if my silence is pushing them further away? Let me tell you something. That silence, the one that feels unbearable, is not rejection, it's revelation. Because silence doesn't just end communication, it exposes truth. See, when you finally stop reaching out, when you stop explaining, defending, or begging to be understood, what begins in that quiet is one of the most powerful psychological shifts you'll ever experience. It's the moment when energy starts to rebalance. At first, it feels like loss. You think you've lost the connection, the chance, the person. But what you've actually lost is the illusion of control. That illusion is what kept you chasing validation, chasing closeness, chasing someone who may never have been emotionally available in the first place. And when you stop chasing, when you sit still long enough for silence to echo, something extraordinary happens. The noise in your mind starts to fade. The questions lose their urgency. And underneath all that chaos, you begin to hear a voice you forgot existed your own. That's what we're talking about today. What happens inside their mind when you finally go quiet? And maybe more importantly, what happens inside yours? Because silence isn't a wall, it's a mirror. And in that mirror, both people start to see what they've been running from. They'll see their fear. You'll see your worth. They'll feel the emptiness of distance. You'll feel the fullness of peace. And if you stay with me through this, I'm going to help you understand step by step what's really happening inside that quiet space between you, why it feels so hard, why it's actually the turning point, and how that silence, the one you think might break you, is actually the beginning of your freedom. So don't run from the quiet. Sit with it. Because by the end of this, you're going to see that silence isn't what ends love, it's what reveals it. It shows you who truly sees you and who only saw your effort. This is not about punishment. It's about power, the kind that doesn't have to raise its voice to be heard. Let's talk about what happens next. The psychological shock of silence. The first thing that unfolds when everything suddenly goes still. Here's what no one tells you about silence. It's not peaceful at first. It's chaos. When you stop reaching out, when you cut the cord of constant contact, your mind doesn't sigh in relief, it panics. Because your brain, it's addicted to patterns. It loves the ping, the buzz, the little hit of dopamine that tells you, I still matter, I still exist in their world. And when that stops, when there's no message to check, no reply to wait for, no tension to decode, your mind scrambles to fill the void. That's not weakness. That's wiring. You've trained your nervous system to associate connection with activity. Reaching out, checking, scrolling, replaying the last thing you said, it becomes your way of staying safe even when it hurts. So when you finally stop, when you go quiet, your body thinks you've lost safety. That's why silence feels like withdrawal. It's your brain detoxing from chaos. And detox never feels good in the beginning. Let me say that again. Silence hurts before it heals. The first few days, you'll feel restless. You'll stare at your phone like it owes you closure. Your heart will whisper, maybe they just need space. Maybe I should check in. And your mind will start bargaining. What if I just send a simple message? What if they're waiting for me to reach out? That's your nervous system trying to restore a pattern, not your intuition. Because the truth is, your intuition isn't anxious. It's calm. And calm doesn't chase. The shock of silence exposes every part of you that once relied on noise to feel alive. And here's the wild part. The same thing happens to them. The avoidant, the one who pulled back, who acted like they didn't care, their mind goes through its own version of shock, but it just looks different. See, the avoidant feels in reverse. At first, silence is their comfort zone. It's what they run toward when emotions get intense. But what they don't realize is that silence doesn't protect them, it isolates them. And when you stop reaching out, they lose the emotional buffer they didn't even know they depended on. You. Because here's what's really happening psychologically. When contact ends, both nervous systems go into recalibration. Yours is screaming, "Where did they go?" Theirs is whispering, "Why does this feel different now?" And that difference, that shift, is where the story changes. You see, silence does something words never could. It interrupts the emotional feedback loop that kept both of you trapped in your roles, the pursuer and the avoider, the fixer and the runner. It stops the dance. And when the dance stops, both people suddenly have to stand still and face themselves. That's the psychological shock. It's the system saying, wait, if I can't chase and they're not responding, who am I without that dynamic? And that's exactly where your power begins. Because silence, when you stay in it long enough, becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, truth starts surfacing, not from them, but from you. So before you label the quiet as rejection, understand it's not punishment. It's the nervous system resetting. It's your heart learning peace after surviving chaos. Silence is the first breath of freedom, but freedom always feels foreign at first. And once that shock fades, once your mind begins to steady, that's when the deeper transformation begins. Because after the shock comes understanding, and understanding begins with empathy, not just for yourself, but for the one who pulled away. Let's talk about that next. What's really going on inside their mind? When you go quiet, let's flip the mirror for a moment. Because while you're over there fighting the urge to reach out, wondering if they even care, something is happening inside their mind too. And no one really talks about it because avoidance, they're experts at pretending they're fine. At first, they are fine. They feel relief. It's familiar. It's quiet. It's safe. They've spent their entire lives believing that distance equals control. But silence has a way of sneaking in through the cracks they didn't know existed. You see, people with avoidant attachment don't avoid you. They avoid themselves. Your closeness triggers their deepest fear. If someone really sees me, they'll leave. So they leave first. That's their logic, their protection. When you go silent, they tell themselves they wanted this. They might even feel powerful for a while. They'll rationalize it. We just weren't compatible. They were too emotional. I need space to think. But underneath all that analysis, there's something deeper, a quiet, unfamiliar ache. Because you were the mirror they didn't know they needed. You were the person who made them feel seen, and being seen terrified them, so they ran. But now, with you gone, their favorite hiding place, your presence is gone too. At first, they distract themselves. They get busy. They fill the silence with noise, work, hobbies, maybe even someone new. But silence is persistent. It waits until they're alone, until the distractions fade, until the night goes quiet, and then it speaks. And what it says isn't easy to hear. It says, you pushed away someone who actually cared. It says, you wanted safety, but now you feel empty. It says, this silence doesn't feel like freedom anymore. It feels like loss. That's the turning point for an avoidant. The moment when avoidance stops working, they start to feel something they can't control. It's not sudden regret. It's a slow erosion of the story they told themselves. The story that said, I'm better off alone. The story that said, they'll always be there if I need them. That story starts to crack. Because now, when they reach for the comfort of your consistency, it's gone. And that absence doesn't feel like peace anymore. It feels like consequence. Avoidants don't realize how much they depend on being chased until the chasing stops. That pursuit, those messages, that reassurance, it wasn't annoying to them. It was stabilizing. It told them, I'm still wanted even if I can't show up fully. But your silence takes that away. And without it, they have to face what they've been avoiding all along themselves. That's why silence rattles them so deeply, because now they can't project the discomfort onto you. They can't say you're too much when it's their own fear that's too loud. And trust me, they feel it. They might not say it, they might not show it, but they feel it. You'll notice subtle signs if you pay attention. The random story reaction, the hey, how have you been? Text out of nowhere. The little breadcrumb of connection. That's not courage. That's curiosity mixed with panic. They're testing the water to see if you're still available. They want to know if they can come back to the safety they once rejected. But here's where you need to be careful. Their reaching out isn't proof of change, it's proof of discomfort. Because real change doesn't start when they miss you. It starts when they face themselves. And you can't do that work for them. You never could. That's why your silence matters. It's not revenge. It's reflection. It's the mirror that finally forces them to look at what they've been running from. So while their mind spirals between pride and pain, relief and regret, you're about to experience something even more powerful. Because silence doesn't just reveal their truth, it reveals yours. Let's talk about that next. What happens inside your mind when you stop reaching out and start hearing your own voice again? Let's talk about you. Because while their silence might be a shield, yours, your chosen silence, is surgery. And healing isn't gentle at first. When you stop reaching out, when you cut off the habit of chasing clarity, your brain doesn't thank you, it protests. See, you've been training your nervous system to respond to chaos for so long that peace feels foreign. Silence feels unsafe because your mind confuses stillness with loss. You've mistaken adrenaline for connection. So when you stop, it feels like withdrawal. You're not just breaking contact with them, you're breaking a pattern inside yourself. That's why the first few days feel so brutal. You wake up reaching for your phone. You scroll through old messages, reread them like clues in a mystery you're trying to solve. You start conversations in your head, what you'd say if you had one more chance. You even convince yourself, maybe they're waiting for me to reach out first. That's not love talking. That's addiction. That's your brain craving the hit of validation it used to get from chaos. And here's where I'm going to challenge you. When that urge hits, when you feel that itch to break the silence, don't act on it. Pause, count it down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and breathe instead of chase. Because every time you resist that urge, you're retraining your nervous system. You're teaching your brain that calm doesn't mean danger. You're proving to yourself that silence doesn't equal abandonment, it equals alignment. Listen, I know what that pull feels like. It's primal. It's the ache of wanting to be seen, to be chosen, to be enough. But when you sit through that ache without running back to the source of your pain, something starts to shift inside you. Your body begins to understand that safety doesn't live in their response. It lives in your restraint. Your peace starts to come from your choices, not their attention. And it's subtle at first. You'll notice small victories. The morning you wake up and realize you didn't check your phone, the second you opened your eyes, the afternoon you catch yourself smiling at something that has nothing to do with them, the night you fall asleep without replaying every conversation in your head, that's your nervous system learning peace again. That's your energy returning home. Because silence isn't the sound of absence, it's the sound of recalibration. It's your mind detoxing from emotional overextension. It's your heart remembering what it feels like to beat for you again. And here's the truth, healing doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like slow mornings. It feels like deep breaths. It feels like not reacting when you could. It feels like quiet pride in choosing peace over panic. You're not losing control in silence. You're reclaiming it. You're finally creating the space where your self-worth can breathe again. And when you stay in that silence long enough, something powerful begins to happen, not outside of you, but inside. The noise starts to fade. The obsession starts to loosen its grip, and The voice that begins to rise up inside of you is one you haven't heard in a long time. Your own, that voice will say, I'm okay. It will say, I don't need to chase to be chosen. It will say, my peace isn't negotiable anymore. That's when the silence stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like power. That's when you realize that the thing you thought would break you is actually the thing rebuilding you. Because silence, when it's intentional, becomes sacred. It's the moment where you stop trying to prove your worth and start embodying it. And here's where it gets really interesting. While you're finding peace in that stillness, they're starting to feel the absence you left behind. That's when the power shift begins. Let's talk about that next. The exact moment when silence starts doing the talking and the entire dynamic changes. Something happens the moment you stop chasing noise. The silence that once scared you starts to speak for you. At first, you didn't notice it. You were too busy fighting the pull to check your phone, too busy battling the voice that said they'll forget you if you don't remind them you exist. But as the days pass, a strange thing begins to happen. The energy shifts. You stop orbiting around them, and they start feeling the space where your energy used to be. Because silence, real silence, the kind that comes from self-respect, isn't emptiness. It's gravity. It pulls truth toward it. It exposes what's real and what's performative. You don't have to announce that you've moved on. You don't have to post quotes or play games. Your stillness does the talking. You've become calm in a world that runs on chaos. And that calm, it's magnetic. Because they're used to you reacting. They're used to the reassurance, the message, the explanation. They've built an entire emotional rhythm around you showing up first. So when you don't, their control starts to crack. At first, they'll brush it off. Oh, they just need time. Then they'll check your page, scroll, hover, maybe even post something to get your attention. That's not confidence. That's confusion. Because silence shifts the dynamic from reaction to reflection. It forces them to see that they no longer have emotional control over you. You see, silence is not passive, it's pressure. It's a quiet kind of confrontation that says, you don't get access to me just because you miss the energy I gave you. And this is where the tables turn. Because now they're the ones asking questions you used to ask. Did they stop caring? Are they seeing someone else? Why doesn't it feel the same anymore? That's not your ego craving revenge. That's the universe rebalancing energy. The chaser becomes the calm. The avoidant becomes the uncertain. The dynamic flips, but don't mistake this power for superiority. It's not about making them hurt. It's about showing yourself that you don't need to shrink to keep love alive. This is the season where your silence starts working for you. It starts sending a message louder than any text ever could. I don't need to beg for peace. I am peace. And they will feel it. Even if they don't say it, they will feel it. Because silence makes people confront the truth they tried to avoid. It shows them the cost of your absence. It reminds them that connection isn't guaranteed, it's earned. You've stopped explaining, and suddenly, the mystery of your calm becomes more powerful than their comfort. You've stopped proving, and that stillness becomes unforgettable. And while they're over there spinning in uncertainty, you're beginning to breathe. You're finally realizing that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's not withdrawal, it's wisdom. This is the power shift, the invisible turn, where you stop being the student of their behavior and start being the teacher of your own boundaries. You've stopped shouting. You've stopped chasing. And yet, you've never been louder. That's the power of silence. It echoes. It expands. And soon, it begins to teach both of you lessons that words never could. Because silence doesn't just change communication, it changes consciousness. And when that transformation begins, something sacred starts to unfold inside you. You stop seeking their reaction and you start meeting your reflection. And that's the beginning of healing. Let's talk about that next. The moment silence stops being a wall and starts becoming a mirror. This is where everything starts to shift, not outside of you, but inside. Because once the noise is gone, once the chasing ends, once your heart has had a chance to breathe, the silence starts to show you what words never could. Silence becomes a mirror. And that mirror, it doesn't lie. It shows you what you've been avoiding, not just about them, but about you. It reflects every pattern, every compromise, every time you tried to earn love instead of expecting it. And I know it's not easy to look because healing isn't glamorous. It's raw, it's quiet, it's honest. In that silence, you'll start to see where your love came from fear, where your giving came from guilt, where your patience came from pain. You'll realize that you weren't just chasing them, you were chasing proof, proof that you were enough, proof that someone could finally stay. But when the silence stretches long enough, that need for proof begins to fade because you start giving yourself what you used to beg for your own attention. That's the moment healing begins. Not when they come back, not when they apologize, but when you start seeing your own reflection with compassion instead of criticism. This is what I call the emotional mirror. It's the phase where you stop asking, why did they do this to me? And start asking, why did I stay when it hurt? And that's not self-blame, that's self-awareness. Because you can't change what you won't name. You can't heal what you refuse to see. And when you finally face yourself, when you see the ways you've been abandoning your own needs to earn someone else's love, something inside you begins to rise. It's quiet, but it's powerful. It's the sound of your self-respect returning. You begin to understand that silence didn't come to break you, it came to build you. It came to show you the places where your boundaries were too thin. It came to teach you that peace doesn't come from being chosen, it comes from choosing yourself. And I want you to hear this. There's a moment in healing where the silence stops feeling like loneliness and starts feeling like sanctuary. Where being alone doesn't sting anymore, it soothes. Where you stop counting the days since they left and you start counting the days you've been free. That's the turning point. That's when silence stops being about them and starts being about you. You'll know you've reached it when you can sit in your own company and feel peace instead of panic. When you can look back without anger, speak their name without shaking, and remember what happened without losing yourself to it. Because now the silence isn't empty, it's full, full of lessons, full of growth, full of truth. And that mirror, the one that once showed you your pain, will start to show you your power. You'll see the person who stayed. You'll see the one who cared. You'll see the one who learned, who grew, who refused to let heartbreak turn into hatred. That's healing. Not moving on to prove you're over it, but growing so deeply that you no longer need to look back to understand your worth. That's what silence was always meant to teach you. And once that lesson lands, once you've met yourself in that mirror and felt your strength, something else starts to happen. They start to feel it too. Because when you heal, the energy changes on both sides. And soon, the silence that once belonged to you starts echoing back to them. Let's talk about that next. What happens when they begin to feel the absence? You've made peace with the moment, the roles reverse, and the power shifts for good. It happens almost every time. When you've finally made peace with the silence, when your hands don't shake reaching for the phone anymore, when you've learned to live without waiting, that's when they come back. It's predictable. It's quiet at first, maybe just a message out of nowhere. Hey, or how have you been? Or something meaningless like, I saw something that reminded me of you. And in that split second, every cell in your body wakes up. Your heart races. Your stomach flips because that message doesn't just touch your phone, it touches the part of you that once begged to be seen. You'll feel that old urge to reply fast, to feed the familiarity, to prove that you're still kind, still open, still the same. But here's where everything changes. Because you're not the same. That message, it's not an invitation to reconnect, it's a test. Not of them, of you. It's the moment where the universe asks, have you learned what your peace costs? Because silence was never just about absence, it was training. Training your nervous system to stay steady when uncertainty knocks on your door again. And it's knocking now. See, when they come back, it's rarely because they've suddenly evolved. It's because your energy has shifted. Your detachment, your calm, your lack of reaction, it changes the dynamic they depended on. They feel the vacuum you left behind. They feel the loss of your attention, your warmth, your stability. Avoidants crave control. And when they lose the predictable version of you, the one who always reached out, who always explained, who always filled the silence, they start to panic. They come back to measure if they still have that control. But you're not here to be measured anymore. You've grown too much to fit back into the cage you built from your own compassion. So when that message comes, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what part of me wants to answer the healed one or the wounded one? Because this moment isn't about them rediscovering your value. It's about you protecting it. And here's the truth. Love doesn't disappear just because you've grown. You can still care deeply and still choose distance. You can still wish them healing and refuse to be their comfort while they avoid it. That's not cold. That's clarity. So when they circle back, when they start testing the waters with little crumbs of attention, remember this, they're not returning because your silence broke them. They're returning because your silence woke them. It reminded them what real emotional safety felt like. It reminded them who you were before you started dimming your light to keep them comfortable. It reminded them that calm doesn't chase. And that's what made you unforgettable. But that doesn't mean you open the door again. It means you decide if letting them in costs you the peace you fought to earn. And if it does, then silence isn't rejection anymore, it's respect. Because when you've healed, you don't need to make noise to prove your strength. You just need to honor your peace enough to protect it. This is where growth reveals itself, not in the goodbye, but in what happens after. When the old pattern comes knocking and you have the courage to say, not this time, that's when silence turns into mastery. That's when peace becomes permanent. That's when you stop proving your worth because your calm has already said it for you. And that's what leads to the most profound shift of all when silence stops being strategy and becomes identity. When you no longer try to be peaceful, you simply are. Let's talk about that next. What real power looks like, the kind that doesn't perform, doesn't chase, doesn't explain, the kind that just is. This is the part where everything settles. The chaos is gone, the ache has softened, and what's left is clarity. This is where silence transforms from something you choose into something you become. Because real power, the kind that lasts, doesn't make noise. It doesn't chase. It doesn't need to convince. It simply exists. You start to realize that power was never about getting the last word. It was never about being right or proving them wrong. It was about remembering that you were whole even in the quiet. And now you can feel it, can't you? That calm that used to scare you has become your home. That stillness that once felt unbearable has turned into strength. This is what self-respect sounds like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's a quiet no where you used to say maybe. It's a steady breath where you used to have a spiral. It's peace not because life is perfect, but because you stopped negotiating your worth. You begin to notice the difference between reaction and response. Reaction comes from fear, from needing to control the outcome. Response comes from awareness, from trusting yourself enough to stay still before you move. That's the redefinition of power. It's not about holding on tighter. It's about knowing when to let go without falling apart. When you stop chasing closure, you start creating it. When you stop waiting for an apology, you start understanding the lesson. When you stop demanding love, you start attracting peace. Because silence taught you something words never could, that what you give energy to grows. And now you've learned to stop watering confusion. You've learned to stop feeding chaos. You've learned to stop chasing what costs your peace. You've stopped being addicted to the noise. You've stopped being addicted to fixing what doesn't want to be healed. And in doing that, you've redefined strength not as endurance, but as alignment. That's what growth feels like. It's not fireworks or applause. It's waking up and realizing you didn't think about them today. It's smiling because peace feels normal now, not rare. It's making decisions from calm instead of pain. And the beautiful irony, that's when life starts moving again. New energy, new people, new opportunities, they find you because you've created space for them. Your silence cleared the static. You're no longer auditioning for love. You're radiating it. You're no longer proving your worth. You're living it. And the people who come into your life now, they won't be attracted to your chaos. They'll be drawn to your calm. That's power, not dominance, not control. Peace. Peace is the highest form of power there is because it's unbothered, it's grounded, it's self-sustaining. It's the kind of power no one can give you and no one can take away. And when you reach this place, something inside you clicks. You stop looking backward for answers and start looking forward for possibility. You stop thinking about who left and start focusing on who's becoming. You've become the person you were searching for. You've become the safe space you wanted someone else to build for you. You've become the calm after your own storm. That's the redefinition of power when peace is no longer a reward for getting it right, but a lifestyle you choose every single day. And now that you've reached this point, there's one last piece to this journey, the moment of realization, the truth that ties it all together. Let's finish this together. Let's talk about what silence really means at the end of it all, not as a weapon, not as withdrawal, but as wisdom. So here you are on the other side of the noise, on the other side of the reaching, the waiting, the wondering. It's quiet now. And that quiet, it's not emptiness anymore. It's peace. You've made it through the hardest part, the part where silence felt like a punishment. And now it feels like presence. Because that's what silence really is, presence without noise. It's the moment when you realize you don't need words to feel connected not to them, but to yourself. You've walked through the ache. You've faced the mirror. You've rebuilt your boundaries and reclaimed your energy. And in doing so, you discovered something extraordinary. The person you were always waiting for was you. That's what silence teaches. It strips away the distractions. It clears the static of validation, of proving, of performing. And what's left is the truth, raw, quiet, undeniable. You still standing, still whole, still capable of love, but no longer at the expense of yourself. You've learned that silence doesn't mean the story ended. It means the chapter changed. It means the lesson landed. It means you finally heard the one voice that mattered most, your own. Because when the noise stops, that's when the truth finally gets a chance to speak. And what it says is simple. You were never too much. You were just with people who couldn't handle depth. Silence taught you that you can care and still choose distance. That you can forgive without reopening the door. That you can grieve without losing gratitude. It showed you that peace is not the prize you get after healing. It's the path that creates healing. And that's something no one can give you and no one can take from you. So from here on out, when you find yourself in silence, don't rush to fill it. Don't mistake it for loneliness. Listen to it, because silence has a language, and that language is clarity. When the urge rises to chase, pause. When the fear whispers that quiet means loss, breathe. And when you wonder if you did the right thing by letting go, remember this moment. The calm you feel right now, that's your answer. You didn't lose anything by going silent. You found everything. And if one day they come back, if life circles around and they knock on the door of your peace, don't let nostalgia make the decision. Let your growth do it, because the person you are now doesn't need closure. You are the closure. You don't need to explain your silence. It already spoke, and it said everything that needed to be said. I love you, but I love me more. That's not cold. That's not pride. That's freedom. So keep your peace. Keep your quiet. Keep your power, because silence isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your becoming. And if you ever forget that, just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and listen. Because the most powerful voice you'll ever hear is the one that rises in the silence.